Hello VC, Michael, Clash City Rocker, with a response video to the video I made last week. Why don't my UK Parlophone Beatle records sound right? But before I begin, I want to express my extreme gratitude to those who commented, those who liked, those who watched my video. Again, my entire purpose for making videos, posting them on YouTube, is to engage with the vinyl community, to connect with other record collectors, other music lovers. And for that, I'm extremely grateful that as many people watched my video last week, that liked it, that commented, and that offered suggestions to why don't the UK Parlophone Beatle records that I purchased sound right. So a quick backstory. I purchased 3 sets of UK Parlophone Beatle records, all 1976, all Harry T. Moss, in 3 different batches. 3 from my local, and then the other 5 through Discogs from 2 different sellers. And I'm going to focus on one Beatle track in my response video, and that is the track Eleanor Rigby. And so apparently, and I know I love my paper, I have Eleanor Rigby on 15 different Beatle records. And I'm going to talk about that pretty briefly. But what I was hearing and what I'm hearing on some of the other tracks, again, those of you familiar with Eleanor Rigby, the song, yes, here's my paper copy of the lyrics, is Paul is singing all the lonely people, and that's coming out very pronounced from both speakers. It kind of just blasts at you. And then the first verse, which goes, Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding as band lives in a dream. All of a sudden, the vocals go to the left instead of being through both speakers. They kind of disappear. They're faint or they're noticeable, but nowhere near as loud as when they were through both speakers. And then when he comes back to the chorus, all the lonely people, where do they come from? It blasts out again and then drops down again when Father Mackenzie verse. And then again, those of you who have heard this talk about it. And so the VC was kind enough to offer a whole number of suggestions on why was the Parlophone records that I was listening to having those experiences. But here are the records that I have as reference for what I'm hearing with Eleanor Rigby. And this is the first one. This is the first Beatle record I ever had. My sister had it. This was a copy that I picked up later, but it's from that same era. This is from 1977. And I guess I never really noticed it before, but now I've been listening for it. That Paul drop-off is very apparent in here. There's a definitely quiet mix to that. And again, another record from my childhood. Now, mostly I was buying cassettes because they were cheaper, but if I didn't have a cassette player, I'd buy a record. So this is a 76 Capital. It's not on the rainbow. It's on that ubiquitous orange. Now, what's interesting about this one is there's the drop-off, but it's louder. It's like definitely a louder mix than that 77 other one. And then as I've been collecting, I'm in record stores and I'll pick things up. Like I picked up this double A side, Yellow Submarine and Eleanor Rigby, which is interesting. These are the only 2 tracks that are on the Red Beatle compilation, which is bizarre because Revolver's got to be the greatest Beatles record. But this whole Beatle rabbit hole began when I picked up this record, the 2014 mono remaster remix, which was part of the mono box set. I made a video about how I pieced together an entire mono box set, one piece at a time, Johnny Cash style. And this is a mono mix, obviously, and this absolutely crushes it. This is the greatest sounding Beatle record. And I've been picking up Beatle records now as I'm immersed in the collecting. I picked up this version, which is a strings only version, and this is from 1996, Anthology 2. This one, which I love, Beatles' Yellow Submarine song track. This one has a version of Eleanor Rigby that's absolutely perfect. And I think the mixes on this were overseen by George Martin, and he kind of made a more modern stereo mix, so it doesn't have the drop-off. But from around that same period is this, Beatles 1. I think this came out in 2000, because remember I bought a CD copy when I was in England. And it has the same drop-off as well on Eleanor Rigby. And then there's other versions of Eleanor Rigby. There's this version on Love, which segues into Julia. There's the remasters, which some people love and some people hate, but that's obviously not a problem on this one. And then, again, I told you as a collector, I wanted to get mono copies of the record. So here is a Capitol Rainbow Mono from '66. This did not have that problem as well. Obviously, it's a stereo mix issue. And then I bought the Revolver box set. It conveniently comes with a stereo version, the new Giles Martin mix, and the 2014 mono box mix, which is great. And then I have, here's that Parlophone record that I was talking to you about again. 1976, the 2 EMI boxes, silver Parlophone, Harry T. Smith mix. And this one, again, there's a noticeable drop-off on the verses when Paul is singing. And again, it turns out I had another Parlophone record, this one also from 1976, the Beatles oldies. This has Eleanor Rigby on it, and it has the drop-off as well. So what the heck is going on here? Why are those stereo mixes just not sounding right on my equipment? And again, the VC were very, very helpful to me, offering a ton of suggestions. 98% of them kind and constructive, which I really appreciate. And so I took the comments from YouTube and I put them into the machine. And I've been dabbling in the machine more and more these days and trying to figure out, do I like it? Do I not like it? And here's what the machine said when it summarized the comments from VC members on why my UK Parlophone records were not sounding correctly. So it said, here's a thematic summary of the main ideas, concepts, and statements from the comments you provided regarding sound issues with the 1970s UK Beatle. 1, phase and channel issues. So this one came out a lot, and I bought a phase checker. I bought 2 of them. I tried it. It's out of phase wiring, blah, 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 using headphones, etc. So out of phase and channel issues. That wasn't it. Then another group of people talked about equipment setup problems. So people mentioned improper cartridge alignment, which I rewired my cartridge twice. Tracking force, I re-looked at that. I watched tutorial videos and made sure I was doing it correctly. And the anti-skate settings, same for that. The tone arm balance, I rebalanced it 3 times. I watched videos, I read about it. And then some talked about my cartridge being not so great. I had an OM10 and the Fluence turntable. We'll talk about that. And then a number of people talked about damage from the previous owner, which starts to make a little bit of sense for me. And then other people talked about pressing variability and quality control. My favorite one was from a Brit who said that, mentioned the whole concept of Friday afternoon cars, that they might not get the same oversight that cars from earlier in the week do. So this may be the same with the record. Then some people talked about the differences in mixes and mastering. And again, you guys know this, those of you who know the record, those of you who are into Beatles. The original stereo mixes, especially the 60s, are often criticized for odd panning and lack of cohesion compared to mono mixes. And it says UK and US pressing sound different due to EQ choices, tape generations, added reverb, and mastering philosophies. And then, so again, many prefer mono mixes or the later reissues like the 2014 mono box or the German 1970s. And I do a lot of reading about Beatles and Beatle music and the creation of the records. And this is the Bruce Spicer book, part of his series. Explains, it talks about the recording of Revolver and Eleanor Rigby. And again, I understand some of that. Then there was playback chain considerations. So some talked about home theater amps, incorrect listening modes, phono preamps. Some people talked about differences in electrical standards between UK and the US. And then finally, some recommendations. They said, try my record on a friend's turntable, which I'll talk about in a second. Use a test LP, which I used to do with my CD player, but I'm going to buy one for my turntable to do that. again, talking about alternate pressings, well, it turns out I have 15 different versions of Eleanor Rigby on 15 different Beatle records, and it's only on certain stereo mixes, the ones from the mid 60s and the ones from the mid 70s. None of the others have issues, only those. And then it just says get rid of those records. Well, that's something I'm working on. And then finally, there were some general sentiments like, do we have unrealistic expectations in terms of what we're supposed to be listening to? And then ultimately, and I think this matters, the listening experience is subjective and it's all prone to our personal histories, which I think is essential. Two things can be right at the same time. So I was intrigued and I just didn't know. So I reached out to the machine for an answer and I said, what I would really want to know if there's a way to solve the audio issues when playing the 1976 UK Parlophone Harry T. Moss stereo version. And the machine said, thank you. Now we're getting to the heart of the matter. You're asking, is there a way to solve the audio issues, blah, blah, blah. And then they illustrate the problem. Dealing with that 76 UK Revolver. Pressings uses 1966 stereo mix with the vocals on the hard right, the strings on the hard left. They talk about my system, talk about what I'm experiencing, and then it says what I want to do, which is I want to fix or improve that experience without replacing the record. And here it is, and I'll post this. The short answer, can it be solved? Not completely, because the problem is in the mix. And I don't know if anybody stayed with me this long. The problem is in the mix. And then it talks about ways to make it better. And then they talk about the different mixes. And then it says, and then I asked the machine one more question. I think what you stated is the most assuring answer yet. Can it be solved? Short answer, not completely, because the problem is in the mix. And the machine said this. And again, I'll post this. It said, I'm really glad that hit home. And you're absolutely right to focus on the mix itself as the root of the issue. When you're dealing with the 1976 UK Harry T. Moss pressing a Revolver, you've got a great cut of a flawed by modern standards stereo source. The pressing is often praised for its clarity and warmth, but no lacquer cutting engineer, not even Harry Moss, could fix a mix where the strings are hard left. Well, they got it backwards on this one, and vocals hard right. What you're hearing is not your gear failing you. It's a result of 1960s experimental stereo panning, a studio workflow that prioritized mono, and I could spend videos. And again, I'm not Beatles, I'm not Parlophone firm, Parlogram. I'm not those guys, but I do listen to a lot of music. And then ultimately, an artistic choice that doesn't translate well. The Beatles spent their time on the mono mixes, not the stereo one. And then I love this next statement. It says, your system is revealing, not the problem. I'll repeat that. My system is revealing the flaw. It's not the problem. And here it goes. And some people laugh at my gear, but that's fine. The Fluence RT82, Orphon OM10, Sony STR DH190, and Fluence HFS speakers are doing exactly what good hi-fi is supposed to do. Reproduce what's on the record faithfully. The problem is what's on the record was mixed with mono radios and lo-fi speakers, not 21st century audio things. And then it continues, it says, when you're dealing with the 1976 UK pressing, you've got a great cut of a flawed stereo source. The pressing is often praised, etc. So it's not my gear, it's the pressing. Now, a punchline of sorts. I bought those 76 Parlophones because I was going to buy the UK original 1960s mixes, but they were kind of out of my price range, and they're not that easy to find here in the States. Well, when I went to test press that record at my local, the 76 Harry Moss, the proprietor said, hey, I've got another copy of Revolver in the back. Why don't we grab that, and I'll play that and see if we can tell if it's got a difference. And what he grabbed was this, and those of you who are Beatle-philes will know this. This is Revolver XEX 605-2 XEX 606-2. This is a 66 Beatles mono Revolver. So a happy ending of sorts. to my dilemma was that I ended up with my first of my original UK Parlophone Beatle records, and this absolutely crushes it. But before I go, I have one other thing to say. So if you're frustrated by the Beatle Eleanor Rigby ones, you can always play the Queen of Soul, Aretha, live at the Fillmore West. And right there, after Bridge Over Troubled Water, Aretha kills it on Eleanor Rigby. So Michael, Clash City Rocker, with a response video to why don't my UK Parlophone records play or sound right. I hope that answered your question. Again, reach out. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for watching my videos. Michael, Clash City Rocker. Peace.